And welcome back to the Capitol Report. I'm Steve Lance. Secretary Kristi Noem making her case on Capitol Hill today for an increased Homeland Security budget. The current year's budget at $65 billion, $107 billion is what Noem and the Trump administration are requesting for fiscal year 2026. Senators also pressing Noem on the department's performance under the new administration. Antony's Paul Graney reports.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem testified before the House Homeland Security Committee today. She used her opening statement to criticize the members of the committee who entered the ICE detention center in Newark last week.
We have footage of those members of Congress slamming their bodies into our law enforcement officers, shoving them, screaming profanities in their faces, striking them with their fists, and otherwise assaulting law enforcement.
After the incident, Representative Robert Menendez Jr. said he was simply there to tour the ICE facility. At today's hearing, Representative Robert Garcia defended the actions.
I just want to also enter for the record Section 527A of the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Act of 2024, that it says explicitly that members of Congress have the right to access ICE detention facilities with no prior notice at any time.
Without objection.
The Trump administration wants to increase the Department of Homeland Security's budget for this coming fiscal year. In written testimony, Noem praised DHS efforts under the new administration to tackle illegal immigration. Some senators accused Noem's DHS of deporting U.S. citizens, specifically young children.
In both of those cases, the mothers chose to keep their children with them when they returned home to their home country.
Noem also said that part of the increased budget will go towards defending against cyber attacks coming from China. Paul Graney, NTD News.
While Secretary Kristi Noem defended calls for her resignation, ICE agents have been busy removing criminal illegal immigrants. Over the last 2 weeks, they've arrested hundreds across the country. ICE agents on Monday arresting 4 illegal immigrants convicted of child sexual abuse in Massachusetts, California, New York, and Texas. And last week, ICE agents arresting more than 400 illegal immigrants in a weeks-long operation in the Houston area, including nearly 300 with past criminal convictions. Those including sexual exploitation of a minor, homicide, arson, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and the list goes on. ICE also deporting more than 500 in the Houston operation. In a 4-day operation earlier this month, ICE agents arresting 52 criminal illegal immigrants around Salt Lake City, Utah. There were charges of crimes that include child molestation, DUI, battery, carrying a concealed weapon, statutory rape, and involuntary manslaughter. Recently, ICE deporting a Chinese national who was deemed a national security risk. He entered the United States with a student visa in 2021 and was convicted of photographing military installations in 2024. So how should the United States advance national and economic security in the Pacific region? Our Washington correspondent Louise Martinez has details from today's House Foreign Affairs hearing.
In 2022, Russia again invaded Ukraine and started a war that killed hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians. Somehow, once again, we were unprepared. The Arab Spring blossomed and died without meaningful U.S. economic support. Venezuelan elections were stolen, and a handful of officials are sanctioned. A coup overthrows democracy in Myanmar, and America's enormous economic power sits idle. Over and over, the U.S. responds to global crises with a fragmented toolkit.
Lawmakers discussed the merits of using U.S. economic power to advance national economic interests in the East Asia Pacific region, but questioned whether the State Department is equipped and structured to wage economic war on U.S. adversaries. NTD spoke with the chairwoman of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on East Asia Pacific region on the threats to the United States' interests coming from that region.
Well, currently there is a lot of flashpoints going on in the Indo-Pacific region, and there is a constant threat of Chinese Communist Party trying to overtake Taiwan. But most important threat is the economic insecurity or economic instability.
Democratic lawmakers highlighted their disagreement with President Trump's methods to reform the State Department, but agreed with Republicans that Congress has a historic opportunity to modernize U.S. diplomacy and advance national economic interests.
I do think it is incredibly important to have economics as part of the State Department, to have representatives around the world within our embassies out there promoting U.S. goods, products, working with our companies to help them navigate, foreign markets and so forth.
Going there and just talking about we value you, we trust you, and we want you to be our friends is not good enough. We need to follow those words with actions and actually bringing some of our serious U.S. Private sector investments.
Democrats and Republicans agreed that the U.S. foreign policy needs more follow-through with its allies in the East Asia Pacific region in this transformational time in the world economy.
There is not one agency that is really focused on economic conversation. We have USTR that is acting as a separate agency, and then there is a whole list of other dozens of agencies without the coherent coordination.
Republicans and Democrats disagree on President Trump's tariff policy, with Democrats arguing that they negatively impact U.S. companies and Republicans advocating their use as the preeminent tool in a new era of national economic security power projection. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
So what can Americans expect from the investment deals President Trump has stacked up in the Middle East? Here to discuss the implications is EJ Antoni, Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. EJ Antoni, thanks so much for joining.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you back with us, EJ. So President Trump visiting the Middle East, Qatar earlier today. This is his second stop of the tour. He announced a $200 billion deal with Qatar related to buying Boeing jets, roughly 160 from what we gather right now. Is this a significant trade deal? $200 billion, not too shabby of a number. And how does it ultimately support the United States?
Well, I think it's definitely a good deal. Look, Steve, at the end of the day, anything we can do that's going to increase American manufacturing and therefore increase American jobs is a good thing. So very, very positive on that front. And that's exactly how it is going to benefit Americans, the fact that we're placing orders for more aircraft that are made here in America by Americans. Again, that's a good thing. And it helps build that industrial base that we so desperately need to recover. We should remember, though, that it's not simply unfair trade practices. It's not simply the actions of other nations that have helped hollow out that industrial base. It's primarily a self-inflicted wound. For example, China did not increase taxes here at home. They didn't increase marginal tax rates. It wasn't China that imposed a massive, burdensome regulatory state. Those are things that, frankly, we did to ourselves. And so in addition to all of these trade deals that the president is hammering out, in addition to all of the investment that he is securing here in America that's going to bring money back to our nation, in addition to that, we also have to fix the problems, again, that we ourselves caused.
Tuesday, we saw a $600 billion commitment from Saudi Arabia that they're allocating to the United States for investment. What kind of economic boost might this bring in terms of jobs, say manufacturing, and long-term business growth?
Well, the reason why we love this kind of investment is the fact that it creates not just a surge in economic activity today, although it surely does that, but in addition, it creates a revenue stream for both foreigners and Americans. If it didn't create that revenue stream for those foreign investors, then they wouldn't invest in the first place, right? You don't buy a dividend stock, for example, because that, for the sake of just holding it, you buy it specifically so that it will pay you those dividends. That's an income investment. So that's what these foreigners are doing here. But in addition to providing that income stream abroad, it also provides an income stream here at home. So it's a win-win. But on top of that, we are going to get more jobs out of this, because if you, for example, build a factory here in the United States, yes, the factory owners, the American investors, are going to have a revenue stream from that, from selling the products the factory produces. But now the foreign investors get to share in those products, and you're employing Americans here at home to produce in that factory as well.
EJ, we saw Elon with Trump in Saudi Arabia. There were other business executives, not as in the spotlight, say, as Elon may have been, that were there from companies like Amazon, OpenAI, Uber, Coca-Cola, NVIDIA, Boeing, and so on, joining a lunch event in Saudi. Does this reflect confidence from those business leaders about Trump's economic approach? And what are they hoping to gain from being on this trip?
Not only does it mean that there's greater confidence on the part of those business leaders in Trump, but also in the Saudis. In other words, these business leaders, that is, are more believing in the Saudis' respect for the rule of law, let's say, with Trump at the helm here in the United States, because they see this administration as a kind of backstop to ensure that other nations abroad will respect property rights of American citizens and of American companies. And so when you have that kind of framework, you are much more willing to invest in those other countries. You're much more willing to do business with those other countries. That's a good thing, because by international trade, we are prospering. It's not as if international trade has again caused all of our problems, like we were saying earlier. That's not to say that all international trade is good or all international trade has just benefited the United States, but we like to see trade where both sides can benefit. And so what are these, to get back to your question, what are these leaders looking to get out of these meetings, to get out of this trip? I think they're looking for business opportunities where they can sell more product. We want to open up consumer markets across the globe to American producers. That's a big part of President Trump's tariff strategy. He's trying to force these other nations that previously have shut our producers out of global markets. He wants to get those consumer markets open to us so that we can export more, and therefore our exporters can employ more Americans.
The White House announcing a $142 billion defense partnership between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. What does the U.S. get out of this type of defense deal, and what would you say are some of the key components there?
Well, one of the things we get is that, again, we continue to build our industrial base because we are going to be selling defense products to these nations. And by doing so, we're going to have our great defense contractors building more products and creating more factories to produce those products. Again, all of this investment here is going to involve not only increases in production and increases in employment, but also increases in infrastructure, which is so important because we need that kind of infrastructure in terms of military readiness. In other words, we need the capacity to create more weapons, essentially. I wish it weren't the case, but we need that capacity on hand in order to meet the demand should it ever arise of a major conflict. And look, if you want peace, prepare for war.
EJ Antoni, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, California could reverse course on offering free health care for illegal immigrants. We'll sit down with Matt Klink and Alex Berrios to discuss the policy pivot and some of the latest developments in Congress.